The crystalline cities of the Jeltari floated like jewels above the purple clouds of Kepler 442c. Elder Eason stood on the observation deck of the main habitat, watching the morning light dance through the transparent walls that had protected her people for 300 years. The Jeltari were a peaceful race, tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl. They had built their civilization on cooperation and knowledge, sharing resources freely among their 12 colony worlds. Everything changed when the long-range sensors detected the approaching fleet. The ships were dark and angular, moving through space like a swarm of angry insects. The Vrauchuri horde had found them. The first attack came without warning. The outer colonies of Kepler 442 grams and Kepler 442 hours went silent within hours. Their defensive platforms, designed more for asteroid deflection than warfare, crumbled under the savage assault. The Vracari were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were raiders who consumed everything in their path, taking slaves and resources before moving on to the next target. Eason received the terrible reports as they poured in from across the system. The Vracari ships were fast and numerous, striking multiple targets simultaneously. Their weapons tore through Jeltari shields like paper, and their boarding parties showed no mercy to civilians. Women, children, elders, none were spared from death or slavery. The defense coordinator, a young Jeltari named Kess, tried to organize a response. The Jeltari had never been warriors, but they were intelligent and resourceful. They evacuated civilians to underground shelters and attempted to coordinate their scattered defensive forces. It was not enough. The Vracari had been conquering worlds for centuries, and they knew how to break the spirit of any resistance. By the third day, 7 of the 12 Jeltari worlds had fallen silent. The survivors huddled in their shelters, listening to the rumble of Vracari mining equipment above. The aliens were strip mining entire continents, taking everything of value while hunting the remaining population for sport. Eason made the decision that would change everything. Despite her people's pride and their long tradition of handling their own problems, she authorized a general distress call. The message would be broadcast on all known frequencies to every civilization within 100 light-years. The translation. Matrix worked to convert her words into dozens of different languages as she spoke into the communications array. Her voice carried the weight of desperation and the fading hope of her dying people. This is Elder Eason of the Jeltari Collective, broadcasting from the Kepler 442 system. We are under attack by a hostile force known as the Vracari horde. Our defenses have failed, and our people are being systematically destroyed. We have never asked for help before, but we are asking now. We offer everything we have, our knowledge, our technology, our loyalty, to any civilization willing to help. U.S. survive. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we are dying. The signal traveled through space at the speed of light, reaching monitoring stations across dozens of star systems. The response was mostly silence. Most civilizations had learned to ignore distress calls from unknown species. The galaxy was a harsh place, and getting involved in someone else's war was usually a path to destruction. The Althurian Republic received the message first. Their military analysts calculated the cost of intervention against the potential benefits. The Jeltari had some interesting technology, but nothing worth risking a war with the Vracari horde. The official response was a polite expression of sympathy and a suggestion that the Jeltari negotiate for better surrender terms. The Nexon, collective masters of space-time manipulation, considered the situation briefly. Their philosophers concluded that the suffering of one species was regrettable, but not their responsibility. They had their own problems to worry about. On the outer rim of the galaxy, in a small star system that most civilizations had never heard of, the signal reached a monitoring station orbiting Earth's moon. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was on the night shift, half asleep over his coffee when the alien transmission began playing through his headphones. Morrison sat up straight as the translation software worked to convert the complex harmonics of the Xeltari language into English. The desperation in Elder Isan's voice needed no translation. These people were dying, and they were asking for help. Morrison had been monitoring space communications for 3 years, mostly listening to routine trade chatter and navigation beacons. This was the first time he had ever received a distress call from an unknown civilization. His training told him to log the transmission and pass it up the chain of command. Instead, he found himself calling Admiral Patricia Wells directly. Wells was the commander of Terra Command, the military organization responsible for Earth's growing space operations. Morrison had never spoken to anyone above the rank of captain, but something about the alien message compelled him to break. Protocol. Admiral, this is Lieutenant Morrison at Luna Station. I've intercepted a distress call that I think you need to hear immediately. Wells was in her office at Terra Command headquarters in Colorado, reviewing deployment schedules for Earth's small but growing space fleet. She had been expecting a quiet evening until Morrison's call came through. Play it for me, Lieutenant. Morrison transmitted the alien message, and Wells listened in silence as Elder Isan's plea filled her office. When it ended, Wells was quiet. For a long moment. How long ago was this transmitted? About 6 hours, Admiral. The signal originated from the Kepler 442 system, approximately 37 light-years from Earth. Wells thanked Morrison and immediately contacted President Helen Carter. Within an hour, an emergency cabinet meeting was called in Washington. The situation was unprecedented. Earth had achieved faster-than-light travel only 20 years earlier, and their military experience was limited to dealing with pirates and border. Disputes with their few alien neighbors. The debate in the Situation Room was intense. Secretary of State Linda Hayes argued that Earth should focus on its own expansion rather than getting involved in alien conflicts. Secretary of Defense Ryan Clark disagreed, saying that this was exactly the kind of situation where Earth needed to establish its principles. We're talking about genocide, Clark said, his voice carrying the weight of his military experience. An entire civilization is being wiped out while we sit here debating the cost of helping them. President Carter listened to both sides before making her decision. She was a former Marine who had served in Earth's colonial forces before entering politics. The idea of ignoring a cry for help went against everything she believed in. They asked for help, she said simply. That's what we do. The order went out within hours. Earth would respond to the Xeltari distress call with everything they had. It was not much by galactic standards. 12 ships and 15,000 personnel, but it was Earth's first major humanitarian intervention in interstellar space. Wells began preparing the fleet immediately. The flagship would be the USS Thunderstrike, a heavy cruiser that represented the best of human engineering. Captain Lisa Murphy would command the USS Defiance, while specialized vessels like the USS Resolve would carry medical supplies and evacuation equipment that, as news of the mission spread through Earth's military, volunteers flooded in from every branch of service. These men and women had never faced alien enemies in real combat, but they understood what was at stake. Somewhere in the darkness of space, innocent people were dying, and Earth was their only hope. The fleet departed Earth orbit 18 hours after receiving the distress call. Billions of people watched the launch on their screens, knowing they were witnessing history. This was Earth's first major military deployment beyond their own solar system, and nobody knew what they would find when they reached the Kepler 442 system. Elder Isan continued broadcasting her distress call, even as the Vraukari forces closed in on the remaining Xeltari strongholds. She had received no response from any civilization, and hope was fading fast. The thought that her people might die alone in the darkness was almost too much to bear. She did not know that help was already on the way, traveling through the void. At maximum speed, the humans were coming, and they were bringing everything they had to offer in defense of people they had never met. The human fleet moved through hyperspace like a storm front, 12 ships pushing their engines to maximum capacity. Admiral Patricia Wells stood on the bridge of the USS Thunderstrike, watching the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel through the main viewport. She had commanded ships for 20 years, but this was her first mission beyond Earth's immediate neighborhood. Captain Lisa Murphy paced the bridge of the USS Defiance, checking systems that had already been checked a dozen times. Her crew of 800 represented some of Earth's finest military personnel, but none of them had ever faced real combat against an alien enemy. The closest thing to battle experience most of them had was dealing with pirates in the outer colonies. The intelligence reports they had gathered about the Vakari horde painted a grim picture. The aliens were a warrior species that had evolved on a harsh desert world where only the strongest survived. They had turned their natural aggression into a tool of conquest, sweeping through star systems like a plague of locusts. Their technology was crude but effective, designed for quick raids and overwhelming force. Commander Kate Phillips, the fleet's intelligence officer, briefed the senior staff during the journey. The Vakari ships were fast and numerous, built for hit-and-run tactics rather than prolonged battles. They preferred to strike multiple targets simultaneously, using fear and confusion to break enemy resistance. They've conquered over 40 star systems in the last 50 years, Phillips explained, her voice carrying over the ship's communication system. Most civilizations surrender after the first attack. Those that resist are usually wiped out within days. What Phillips did not mention, because Earth's intelligence services did not yet understand it, was that humanity came from what the galaxy classified as a death world. Most alien civilizations had evolved on planets with stable climates, predictable weather patterns, and relatively gentle ecosystems. Their planets were gardens compared to Earth. Earth was different. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, plagues, predators, and 1,000 other natural disasters had shaped human evolution for millions of years. Where other species developed cooperation and harmony with their environment, humans had learned to fight for survival against a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. This difference would soon become apparent to the galaxy. But now, the human fleet was simply 12 ships carrying 15,000 people who had volunteered to help strangers in need. The journey to Kepler 442 took 18 days at maximum hyperspace velocity. During the transit, the crews trained constantly, running combat simulations and studying everything known about Vakari tactics. The humans approached warfare differently than most species, combining lessons learned from thousands of years of conflict on Earth. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner, captain of the assault ship USS Hammer, had studied military history at the Naval Academy. He spent hours reviewing ancient battles, looking for tactics that might be adapted to space combat. The idea of applying lessons from Thermopylae or Normandy to interstellar warfare seemed absurd to most alien military theorists, but Turner understood something they did not. War was war, regardless of the environment. The principles of strategy, logistics, and leadership remained constant, whether the battlefield was a muddy field in France or the vacuum of space around an alien star. The human approach to ship design also reflected their unique perspective. While most alien vessels were elegant and streamlined, designed for efficiency and aesthetic appeal, human ships were brutal and practical. The USS Defiance looked like a flying brick bristling with weapons, its armor thick enough to withstand punishment that would cripple more delicate vessels. Engineer Chief Bobby Martinez had overseen the construction of several human warships, and he understood the philosophy behind their design. Other species build ships like they're going to a parade, he often said. We build them like we're going to war. The Vrakari scout networks detected the approaching human fleet while it was still 3 days out from Kepler to 442. The alien sensors registered 12 unknown vessels traveling at high speed toward the battlefield. The information was immediately transmitted to Warlord Skraff, the Vrakari commander overseeing the destruction of the Zheltari civilization. Skraff was an ancient warrior, his chitin scarred from 100 battles. He had personally led the conquest of 17 star systems, and no enemy had ever given him serious trouble. The idea that these newcomers might pose a threat was amusing rather than concerning. 12 ships. He clicked to his subordinates, the sound resembling laughter. The prey calls for help, and 12 ships answer. We will add them to our collection of trophies. The Vrakari had never encountered humans before, and their intelligence on Earth was limited to basic astronomical data. They knew it was a young civilization that had only recently achieved interstellar travel. What they did not know was that Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet so hostile that most galactic civilizations would consider it uninhabitable. Meanwhile, the surviving Zheltari huddled in their underground shelters, listening to the sounds of destruction above. Elder Isen had received confirmation that her distress call had been answered, but the responding force seemed pitifully small compared to the massive Vrakari armada. The aliens who had responded called themselves humans, from a planet called Earth. Isen had never heard of either, and the galactic databases contained only basic information about the Sol system. Earth appeared to be a minor world on the galactic rim, inhabited by a species that had barely begun to explore space. Isen felt a mixture of gratitude and despair. These humans had come to help when no one else would, but they seemed to be sailing toward their own destruction. The Vrakari fleet numbered over 300 ships, and they had never been defeated in open battle. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, immediately deploying in a defensive formation while their sensors swept the battlefield. What they found was worse than their intelligence reports had suggested. Wreckage drifted throughout the system like metallic snow. The elegant Zheltari habitats had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris, while Vrakari harvesting platforms stripped the planets bare of resources. The gas giant Kepler 442b glowed with unnatural fire where orbital refineries processed stolen materials. Admiral Wells studied the tactical display, counting over 200 enemy contacts concentrated around the inner planets. The odds were approximately 20 to 1 against the human fleet, numbers that would have discouraged most commanders. Wells had different thoughts. Signal the fleet, she ordered her communications officer. All ships prepare for combat operations. We did not come this far to turn back now. Captain Murphy received the order aboard the USS Defiance, feeling a mixture of excitement and terror that her crew shared. They were about to engage in Earth's first major interstellar battle, and the enemy outnumbered them by an overwhelming margin. But Murphy remembered something her father had told her when she was a child. Colonel Frank Murphy had served in the Azov Marine Corps during Earth's colonial expansion, and he had faced impossible odds before. Numbers don't win battles, he had said. Will does. Preparation does. The willingness to do whatever it takes to protect what matters. The human fleet moved deeper into the system. Their ships spread in a formation that confused both the Vrakari and the surviving Zheltari observers. Most species fought in geometric patterns that emphasized order and predictability. The humans moved like a pack of wolves, maintaining coordination while appearing to operate in controlled chaos. The first contact came when a Vrakari patrol encountered the destroyer USS Vengeance at the edge of the asteroid belt. Captain Danny Rogers, a former Special Forces operator, pilot-turned-naval officer, found himself facing 6 alien vessels that moved around his ship like predators circling wounded prey. The Vakari expected the lone human ship to retreat or surrender when faced with superior numbers. Their tactics had worked against dozens of other species, and they saw no reason why these newcomers would be any different. Captain Rogers had different ideas. He opened a communication channel on all frequencies, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never backed down from a fight. "This is Captain Danny Rogers of the Terran Defense Force. You are engaged in genocide against a peaceful species. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The Vakari response was transmitted as clicking sounds and aggressive pheromone releases that their translation software rendered as laughter. Sub-Commander Thek, leader of the patrol, considered humans to be just another soft species playing at war. His pack moved in for what should have been an easy kill. They encountered something no Vakari had ever faced before. The USS Vengeance moved like nothing the Vakari had ever seen in combat. Instead of following the predictable patterns that most species used in space warfare, Captain Danny Rogers employed tactics that seemed to come from pure chaos. The human destroyer dropped below the engagement plane, using the asteroid field as cover, while the 6 Vakari ships tried to maintain their attack formation. Sub-Commander Thek clicked orders to his pack, but the human ship refused to behave according to standard combat doctrine. Every time the Vakari moved to surround their target, the Vengeance shifted position in ways that seemed impossible. The human captain was fighting like someone who expected to be outnumbered and had planned accordingly. Rogers had indeed planned for exactly this situation. During the 18-day journey to Kepler 442, he had studied every available report on Vakari tactics. The aliens were used to enemies who fought with honor and followed established rules of engagement. They expected their opponents to meet them in open battle, ship against ship in formal combat. Human warfare had never worked that way. On Earth, survival had always gone to those who could adapt, improvise, and use every advantage available. Rogers applied lessons learned from naval battles, guerrilla warfare, and street fighting to the vacuum of space. The Vengeance emerged from behind a massive asteroid directly behind the Vakari formation. Before the aliens could react, Rogers unleashed everything his ship had. Kinetic projectiles, plasma torpedoes, and electronic warfare attacks hit the enemy vessels simultaneously. The human ship had sacrificed some armor and life support systems to carry more weapons, a design philosophy that reflected Earth's aggressive approach to combat. The Vakari ships had been built for speed and intimidation rather than durability. Their sleek hulls, designed to inspire fear in enemy populations, crumpled under the coordinated barrage. 2 alien vessels exploded immediately, their reactor cores breached by human weapons that hit harder than anything the Vakari had encountered before. Thek tried to coordinate a response, but his communications were being jammed by human electronic warfare systems. The Vengeance had launched dozens of small drones that interfered with Vakari sensors and targeting systems. The aliens found themselves fighting blind, while their enemy seemed to know exactly where they were. Rogers pressed his advantage, ordering his crew to execute maneuvers that would have been impossible for most alien ships. The Vengeance spun through 3 dimensions while maintaining fire on multiple targets. Its human crew held in place by acceleration compensators that had been designed for Earth's brutal gravitational environment. Within 12 minutes, 4 Vakari ships were destroyed, and 2 more were crippled beyond repair. The surviving vessel, badly damaged and leaking atmosphere, limped away from the battlefield. Thek's final transmission to the Vakari fleet carried news that would shock the Horde to its core. These Deathworlders fight like nothing in recorded history. They do not follow the rules. They do not show mercy. They fight like their world made them to survive. The term Deathworlder spread through the Vakari communications network like wildfire. Intelligence officers began pulling up data on Earth, and what they found disturbed even the most hardened warriors. The human homeworld was a Class 12 hostile environment, a planet where survival required constant adaptation to natural disasters, climate changes, and predator species. Most alien civilizations had evolved on garden worlds, where cooperation with the environment was the key to success. Humans had evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill them, and they had responded by becoming the most dangerous predators their planet had ever produced. Admiral Wells received the report of the Vengeance's victory with mixed emotions. The success was encouraging, but it had also revealed their position to the entire Vakari fleet. She could see enemy ships moving to intercept the human force, and the odds were still overwhelmingly against them. The surviving Zheltari monitored the battle from their hidden shelters, barely daring to hope. Elder Eason established direct communication with Admiral Wells, and their first conversation became the foundation of an alliance that would reshape galactic politics. The translation matrix struggled with human emotional concepts as Eason spoke. Admiral Wells, why did your people come here? You owe us nothing, and you risk everything by facing the Vakari horde. Wells' response was transmitted back to Earth and recorded in the archives of both civilizations. Elder Eason, you asked for help, and that's what good people do. My species has a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. The Zheltari had never encountered a philosophy quite like this. Most galactic civilizations operated on principles of mutual benefit and calculated risk. The idea that one species would risk destruction to help complete strangers was almost incomprehensible. But the humans had come, and they were fighting with a ferocity that defied all expectations. The Vakari fleet began moving toward the human position, Warlord Scrath himself leading the assault in his flagship, the Bone Harvester. Admiral Wells deployed her fleet in a formation that initially confused both allies and enemies. Instead of the traditional geometric patterns favored by most species, the humans arranged their ships in what appeared to be random positions. Only careful observation revealed the method behind the apparent madness that each human ship was positioned to provide covering fire for at least two others, while maintaining clear escape routes and overlapping fields of fire. The formation looked chaotic, but it was actually a carefully designed trap that would funnel enemy ships into killing zones, while providing maximum flexibility for the human commanders. Captain Lisa Murphy aboard the USS Defiance studied the approaching Vakari fleet through her tactical display. Over 100 enemy ships were moving toward their position, led by a massive flagship that dwarfed anything in the human fleet. The rational response would be to retreat and call for reinforcements. Murphy had no intention of retreating. Her crew had trained for exactly this kind of engagement, and human ships had been designed with close combat in mind. Where other species preferred to fight at long range with elegant maneuvers, humans had built their vessels to survive and inflict damage at point-blank range. The Defiance was a perfect example of human military engineering. Its hull was thick, enough to absorb punishment that would destroy more delicate vessels, and its weapons were designed to punch through any armor at close range. The ship looked like a flying fortress, because that was exactly what it was intended to be. The main battle began when the Vakari fleet entered weapons range. Warlord Scrath had arranged his ships in the traditional attack formation that had served the Horde well for centuries. Waves of fast attack craft would swarm the enemy, while heavy cruisers provided fire support from a safe distance. The humans refused to cooperate with Vakari expectations. Instead of maintaining formation and trading fire at long range, the human ships dove straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. Admiral Wells had gambled everything on the superior durability of human vessels and the adaptability of their crews. Captain Murphy led the charge, the USS Defiance plunging through the Valkyrie, formation like a battering ram. Enemy fire hammered against her shields and armor, but the human ship had been built to absorb exactly this kind of punishment. Murphy's crew worked with the precision of a machine, coordinating damage control, weapons fire, and navigation while, under extreme stress, the Valkyrie found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to thrive on chaos. Human ships appeared and disappeared from unexpected angles, coordinating attacks that defied all conventional tactical doctrine. Where other species fought with honor codes and established protocols, humans brought centuries of warfare experience to bear. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner demonstrated the human approach when he deliberately allowed the USS Hammer to appear disabled. 3 Valkyrie cruisers moved in for the kill, expecting an easy target. Instead, Turner's ship erupted with hidden weapon systems and destroyed 2 enemies while crippling the 3rd. The engagement became a masterclass in adaptive warfare. Human commanders shared information instantly, coordinating their attacks while maintaining the flexibility to respond to changing conditions. Their ships moved like a pack of wolves, maintaining unity of purpose while operating with individual initiative. Warlord Scroth watched the battle from his flagship with growing disbelief. His forces outnumbered the humans by more than 10 to 1, but the Deathworlders were fighting like demons. Every tactical doctrine he had learned over centuries of conquest was proving useless against an enemy that refused to follow the rules. The Bone Harvester, massive and intimidating, moved toward the center of the battle. Scrath intended to end the engagement personally, using his flagship's superior firepower to crush the human resistance. The alien warlord had never been defeated in personal combat, and he saw no reason why these newcomers would be any different. Captain Murphy saw the enemy flagship approaching and made a decision that would define humanity's reputation in the outflying galaxy. Instead of retreating from the superior enemy vessel, she ordered the USS Defiance on an intercept course. The collision course alarm sounded throughout the human ship as Murphy broadcast on all frequencies. Captain Lisa Murphy's voice carried across every communication channel as the USS Defiance charged toward the massive Valkyrie flagship. This is Captain Lisa Murphy, Heron Defense Force, to all Valkyrie forces. Earth remembers its children, and we do not surrender, ever. The words sent shockwaves through both fleets. The surviving Zheltari, listening from their hidden shelters, had never heard such defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. Elder Ozin found herself weeping crystalline tears, not from despair, but from a strange mixture of hope and admiration for these aliens, who had traveled across the galaxy to die for strangers. Warlord Scrath, aboard the Bone Harvester initially, interpreted the human captain's words as the desperate bravado of a defeated enemy. His flagship was 3 times the size of any human vessel, armored with the finest materials the Valkyrie had plundered from a dozen conquered worlds. The idea that a single enemy ship would dare to challenge him directly seemed like madness, but Murphy was not planning a simple ramming attack. As the USS Defiance approached the enemy flagship, her crew executed a maneuver that had been practiced dozens of times during their journey to Kepler 442. The human ship dove below the Bone Harvester's weapon odds, threading the gap between the massive vessel's primary armaments, while unleashing every torpedo and energy weapon at point-blank range. The Valkyrie flagship had been designed to intimidate through size rather than for structural integrity. Its hull was thick, but not well reinforced, built more for psychological impact than genuine durability. When dozens of human weapons struck at close range, the massive ship began to come apart. Scrath felt his command vessel shudder around him as explosions rippled through the hull. Emergency lights flickered, and the artificial gravity failed in several sections. The warlord who had conquered 17 star systems found himself holding on to, his command chair as his flagship broke apart around him. The destruction of their leader's vessel sent shockwaves through the Vakari fleet. For a species that understood only strength and intimidation, seeing their greatest warrior's ship crippled by an unknown enemy was devastating. Sub-commanders who had never retreated from any battle began ordering their forces to withdraw from engagement range. Admiral Wells was not finished. Her tactical display showed the enemy fleet in disarray, and she recognized an opportunity that might not come again. Against all conventional military wisdom, she ordered the human fleet to pursue the retreating Vakari forces. All ships, this is Admiral Wells. Press the attack. Do not give them time to regroup. The order violated every principle of space combat that most civilizations followed. Pursuing a numerically superior enemy force was considered suicide by galactic military standards. But the humans had already demonstrated that they did not follow standard military doctrine. Captain Danny Rogers aboard the USS Vengeance led the pursuit, his destroyer racing after the fleeing Vakari ships. The human vessels, designed for durability, rather than speed, should not have been able to keep up with the faster alien craft. But human engineering had prioritized different capabilities. Where other species built ships for elegance and efficiency, humans had focused on redundancy and damage tolerance. Their vessels could maintain full speed even after taking hits that would cripple more delicate craft. The pursuing human fleet absorbed enemy fire while closing the distance, their heavy armor and multiple backup systems keeping them operational. The chase led through 3-star systems, each one containing evidence of Vakari occupation. At Proxima Centauri b, the humans found a mining operation worked by enslaved methane, silicon-based beings who had been forced to extract rare minerals in atmospheric conditions that were slowly killing them. Commander Kate Phillips coordinated the liberation effort, working with methane resistance fighters who had maintained a guerrilla campaign against their occupiers. The aliens were amazed to discover that humans had extensive experience fighting against superior numbers and overcoming technological disadvantages. "Your species has fought wars like this before?" asked Zedel, a methane leader whose crystalline body bore scars from Vakari torture devices. Phillips nodded grimly. "Earth's history is full of people fighting against impossible odds. We've learned that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to lose." The pattern repeated at each liberated system. The Eutron, aquatic creatures who had been forced to work in atmospheric processors, were freed by human marines who adapted their tactics to underwater combat. The Deltari, energy beings who had been harvested for their life force, were rescued by human engineers who improvised containment systems from spare parts. Each liberation brought new allies to the growing coalition. The freed species contributed their own ships and knowledge to the human-led force, creating the first truly multi-species military alliance in galactic history. Admiral Wells found herself commanding vessels powered by methane crystal technology, armed with Eutron plasma weapons, and guided by Deltari energy sensors. The campaign culminated at the Vakari forward base in the Altair system. Fleet Admiral Zek, second only to the now-deceased warlord Skrath, had gathered nearly 200 ships for a final stand. The alien commander was a veteran of 40 years of conquest, and he understood that this battle would determine the fate of the Vakari horde. Admiral Wells approached the enemy stronghold with a combined fleet of 37 vessels representing 6 different species. The human ships still formed the core of the force, but they were now supported by alien technology and tactics. The coalition had become something greater than the sum of its parts. Fleet Admiral Zek opened communications with the approaching fleet, his words transmitted in the clicking language of the Vakari. "Unknown Commander, you have fought well, but this ends here. Withdraw now, and we will grant you and your allies swift deaths. Continue this assault, and we will make your suffering last for generations. Admiral Wells' response became legendary among the species that heard it, speaking not just to Zek, but broadcasting to every monitoring station within range. She delivered words that would define humanity's role in galactic civilization. Fleet Admiral Zek, this is Admiral Patricia Wells of the Terran Defense Force. We didn't come here for conquest or glory. We came because people asked for help, and we're not leaving until every last slaver and murderer is gone from this sector. The final battle began with a coordinated assault that demonstrated everything the Coalition had learned. Metheny ships used their crystal technology to punch through Vakari shields, while Utrin vessels employed their mastery of fluid dynamics to outmaneuver enemy formations. Deltari energy beings provided real-time intelligence that allowed the human commanders to anticipate enemy movements. But it was human leadership that held the Coalition together. Admiral Wells coordinated the diverse forces with a skill that impressed even veteran alien commanders. She understood that each species brought unique capabilities to the battle, and she used those strengths to create tactical advantages that no single fleet could have achieved. Captain Murphy's USS Defiance, repaired and reinforced with alien technology, led the assault on the enemy command station. Her crew had integrated Metheny crystal arrays into their weapon systems and Utrin adaptive armor into their hull plating. The ship that emerged from the upgrades was a hybrid of human, engineering, and alien science. The Vakari fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction. Their empire had been built on the assumption that fear and overwhelming force would always triumph over organized resistance. The Coalition's success challenged everything they believed about warfare and civilization. Fleet Admiral Zek, facing inevitable defeat, made one final desperate gambit. His remaining forces surrounded a nearby inhabited system, threatening to destroy the planet's population unless the Coalition withdrew. "You may defeat us here," Zek transmitted to Admiral Wells, "but we will take millions with us. Is your conscience worth their lives?" The threat put Wells in an impossible position. She had come to save innocent lives, not to sacrifice them for military victory. The moral weight of potentially causing a genocide pressed down on her as she considered her options. But the Admiral had learned something during the campaign that would guide her decision. The Coalition forces were not just human vessels supported by alien technology. They had become a true alliance of species, united by shared principles and mutual respect. Elder Hassan, now serving as the Coalition's diplomatic coordinator, spoke for all the liberated species when she answered Zek's ultimatum. "Fleet Admiral, we know what slavery looks like. We know what it means to live under the constant threat of death. These humans came to free us when no one else would help. We will not abandon them now, and we will not let you continue your crimes." The response came not just from the Jeltarai, but from every species in the Coalition. The Metheny pledged their crystal weapons, the Utrin offered their adaptive technology, and the Deltari provided their energy manipulation abilities. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species had united not for conquest or profit, but for the simple principle that innocent people deserved protection. Admiral Patricia Wells gave the order that would reshape galactic civilization. All Coalition forces execute Operation Mercy Strike. Target only military installations and command vessels. Civilian populations are to be protected at all costs. The final assault on Fleet Admiral Zek's forces became a masterpiece of coordinated warfare. The Coalition fleet moved as one entity, each species contributing their unique abilities to a strategy that no single civilization could have conceived. Human ships provided the backbone of heavy assault capability, their thick armor and powerful weapons carving through Vakari defensive lines. Metheny crystal vessels focused their energy beams on enemy shield generators. Their silicon-based technology perfectly suited for precision strikes against specific targets. The Utran fleet used their fluid dynamics mastery to flow around Vrokari formations like water around rocks, striking from unexpected angles before disappearing into the void. The Deltari, energy beings, proved to be the most valuable intelligence asset the galaxy had ever seen. Their ability to exist as pure energy allowed them to infiltrate enemy communication networks and provide real-time tactical data to the Coalition commanders. For the first time in galactic warfare, one side had complete knowledge of their enemies' movements and intentions. Fleet Admiral Zek found his carefully planned defensive strategy crumbling as the Coalition forces anticipated his every move. The Vrokari had never faced an enemy that could predict their tactics with such accuracy, and their traditional advantage of superior numbers became meaningless when their opponents knew exactly where to strike. Captain Lisa Murphy led the USS Defiance through the heart of the enemy formation, her ship now a hybrid of human engineering and alien technology. The methane crystal arrays integrated into her weapon systems allowed for unprecedented accuracy, while Utran adaptive armor made her vessel nearly invulnerable to Vrokari weapons. The battle reached its climax when Murphy's ship engaged Zek's flagship in single combat. The alien admiral had challenged the human captain personally, believing that defeating their leader would break the Coalition's spirit. It was a mistake that revealed how little the Vrokari understood about human nature. Murphy accepted the challenge, but not for personal glory or honor. She fought because the Coalition needed to send a clear message to every slaver and tyrant in the galaxy. The USS Defiance and Zek's flagship circled each other like ancient gladiators, their weapons painting space with deadly light. The engagement lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, Zek's ship was a drifting wreck, and the Vrokari horde had been broken forever. The surviving alien vessels surrendered or fled into deep space, their empire of terror finally brought to an end, but the victory came at a cost. The USS Defiance had taken critical damage during the final battle, and Captain Murphy had been severely injured when her bridge was hit by enemy fire. As medical teams worked to save her life, she managed to transmit one final message to the Coalition fleet. Admiral Wells, mission accomplished. The horde is finished. Tell Earth that we kept our promise. Murphy survived her injuries, but her words became the foundation of a new philosophy that would guide humanity's role in galactic affairs. Earth had not come to Kepler 442 for conquest or profit. They had come because innocent people needed help, and they had kept fighting until those people were safe. The aftermath of the campaign reshaped galactic politics in ways that no one had anticipated. The Galactic Council, a loose confederation of older civilizations that had maintained neutrality during the crisis, suddenly found themselves dealing with a new power structure. The Coalition species, united by their shared experience of liberation, formed the Mutual Defense Alliance with Earth as the founding member. The treaty was simple in its language, but revolutionary in its implications. Any species that faced genocide or enslavement could call upon the Alliance for protection, and member worlds would respond with everything they had. Elder Eason, now serving as the first alien ambassador to Earth, presented the treaty to President Helen Carter in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. Her words, translated into dozens of languages, became the charter for a new era of interstellar cooperation. Humanity came to us when we were dying, asking nothing in return except the chance to do what was right. Today, we pledge that no innocent people will ever face extinction alone again. The Alliance stands ready to answer any call for help, just as Earth answered ours. The response from other galactic civilizations was mixed. The Althurian Republic, which had refused to help the Jeltari, quietly opened diplomatic channels with the Alliance. The Nexan Collective, masters of space-time manipulation, began sharing their advanced technology with human scientists. But it was the reaction of smaller, previously ignored species that truly demonstrated the impact of humanity's actions. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had lived in fear of raiders and slavers began to hope again. They had seen proof that good people existed in the universe, and that sometimes help could come from the most unexpected places. Commander Kate Phillips, now promoted to Admiral and serving as Earth's Director of Galactic Intelligence, established monitoring stations throughout the liberated sectors. Her mission was simple: listen for distress calls and ensure that the Alliance could respond quickly to any new threats. The first test of the Alliance came 6 months after the Vakari defeat. A species called the Corvani sent out a desperate plea for help as their homeworld was invaded by mechanical entities known as the Harvesters. The call reached Earth within hours of transmission. President Carter's response was immediate and decisive. Admiral Wells deployed the 7th Fleet to Corvani space. Rules of engagement are the same as they were at Kepler 442. Protect the innocent. Stop the aggressors. Bring our people home. The Alliance response fleet that assembled included vessels from 8 different species, but it was still commanded by human officers who had learned their trade in the crucible of the Vakari campaign. Admiral Wells led the mission personally, her flagship now the USS Humanity, a massive vessel built with technology, contributed by every member of the Alliance. The pattern established at Kepler 442 repeated itself across the galaxy. When innocent people called for help, the Alliance answered. When tyrants threatened genocide, human-led fleets appeared to stop them. When slavers raided peaceful worlds, they found themselves facing an enemy that would never give up and never give in. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. Humanity had introduced a concept that was revolutionary to galactic civilization: the idea that protecting strangers was not just acceptable, but morally necessary. Other species began to adopt human attitudes toward justice and mercy, creating a cultural shift that transformed interstellar relations. The Galactic Council, recognizing the new reality, officially invited Earth to join as a full member within 1 year of the Kepler 442 campaign. The ceremony took place on Geltari Prime, the reconstructed homeworld of humanity's first alien allies. Admiral Wells, now Fleet Admiral and commander of all Alliance forces, stood before representatives of 300 civilizations as elder. Eason administered the oath of membership. The words she spoke had been chosen carefully, reflecting both human values and galactic traditions. We, the people of Earth, accept membership in the Galactic Council with the understanding that our primary responsibility is to all sentient life in the galaxy. We pledge to defend the innocent, protect the weak, and ensure that no call for help goes unanswered. The response from the assembled delegates was unprecedented. For the first time in Council history, every member species voted unanimously to approve a new member's application. Earth had earned their respect, not through conquest or intimidation, but through their willingness to sacrifice for others. But the ceremony was interrupted by an urgent communication from the monitoring stations. At the galactic rim, a new distress call had been detected, this one from a species facing extinction at the hands of an unknown enemy. The plea was desperate, transmitted on all frequencies with the hope that someone, somewhere, would care enough to help. Fleet Admiral. Wells listened to the alien voices pleading for their lives, and she felt the same emotion that Lieutenant Jake Morrison had experienced 2 years earlier when he first heard the Geltari distress call. These were people in trouble, and they were asking for help. She turned to the assembled delegates, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced impossible odds and won. Council members, we have work to do. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of species offered ships, technology, and personnel for the rescue mission. The Alliance had grown from Earth's desperate gamble to save the Geltari into a galactic force for justice that spanned hundreds of worlds. Elder Eason, now serving as the Council's liaison to the Alliance, made the closing statement that would be remembered for generations. They called themselves the children of a death world, but we learned the truth. They are the children of hope, raised in adversity, tempered by struggle, and willing to fight for strangers, because that is who they choose to be. The galaxy is safer with humanity among us, and we are honored to call them friends.